The accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skia presents the 28th College Football Hall of Fame season of Fighting Irish Preview. And now, your host, Phil Houck.
Another week, another dominant win, but of course, not without the requisite slow starts. Let's take a look at those slow starts. Game 1, Texas A&M. A&M took a 3-0 lead on the first drive of the day. Game 2, Northern Illinois. In a game we don't like to forget, the Irish actually took a 7-0 lead on the opening possession. Northern Illinois, however, quickly tallied the next two scores, and at the end of the first quarter owned a 10-7 advantage. We all know how that one ended. Game 3, Purdue. Well, this game is the outlier. ND rolled to a 66-7 final. It's hard to tell just what kind of a start the Irish had in this game because, well, their opponent never really showed up. But Game 4, Miami of Ohio, the ND offense produced 0 points in the first quarter. Miami of Ohio scored first, and midway through the second quarter, they still led 3-0. Riley Leonard at that point was having a hard time hitting the broadside of a jumbotron, and boos were cascading down in Notre Dame Stadium. Game 5, Louisville. In this one, the Irish had just about the worst slow start imaginable. They fumbled away the opening kickoff, and a few plays later, the Cardinals owned a 7-0 lead. Game 6, Stanford. The Irish, as usual, took a step back before taking charge. ND punted away its first possession, and Stanford promptly drove 63 yards in 9 plays to take a 7-0 lead. Game 7, Georgia Tech. Last week, the Irish went 3-and-out on their first possession and then turned the ball over on Riley Leonard's worst pass in a month on their next possession. Georgia Tech, led by their backup quarterback, owned a first quarter 7-0 lead. 7 games, 6 slow starts. Nonetheless, the Irish stand at 6-1. And that brings us to the 6-0 and 24th ranked Navy. Navy's good, really good. Their 4th ranked rushing attack can control the clock and torture you into submission, and they can now throw the football. On the season, Navy has thrown 10 touchdown passes. That's 2 more than the Irish have thrown. So be careful, because if the Irish start slow this week against Navy, like the Irish have in 6 of 7 so far in 2024, the luck of the Irish just might run out. Guadalupe's Mexican Grill, now with locations on Illinois, Leo, and DuPont Roads, in Georgetown Square, and in the Allen County Memorial Coliseum. Guadalupe's, food made fresh. Now, stay tuned for Fighting Irish Insight. From America's foremost authority on Notre Dame football, Tim Priester, publisher of IrishIllustrated.com. Fighting Irish Preview is brought to you by the accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, Shear McCulloch Auctioneers, Notre Dame Federal Credit Union, where you bank does matter, and Flight by Yuengling. 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories. It's the next generation of light beer. This is Fighting Irish Preview.
The University of Notre Dame exemplifies dedication to hard work, integrity, and personal values, which result in success in the classroom and on the football field. The professionals at Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, like Notre Dame, know the same dedication, and their experience and expertise provide peace of mind for you and your business. Tax planning, tax compliance, auditing, business valuation, and estate planning, the full-service accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, like the Irish, has what it takes to help you achieve success. Located in Fort Wayne near Jefferson Point, Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba proudly supports Notre Dame football and congratulates all those who are a part of the greatest tradition in all of sports. Go Irish!
Flight by Yuengling is the next generation of light beer. For those who don't follow trends, but craft them. Flight by Yuengling is 12 ounces of uncompromised refreshment from America's oldest brewery. With only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, this is premium refreshment 6 generations in the making. Don't just raise a glass, raise the bar. Flight by Yuengling. Available wherever beer is sold. DG Yuengling & Son Incorporated, Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Please enjoy responsibly.
Now back to Fighting Irish Preview with your host, Phil Houck.
Well, Tim Priester, of course we love the wins, but another game last week and another slow start by the Irish. 3-and-out to start, really bad interception on the next drive. Leonard's worst pass in a month, I thought. And the Irish are behind 7-0. They have fallen behind at the start or been behind at the end of the first quarter in every game this year except Purdue, and Purdue doesn't really count because I don't even think Purdue showed up that day. Is this just a coincidence, or is there something else going on here, and what can the Irish do to address it?
I wouldn't call it a coincidence. I think that, I think that Al Golden does a great job of adjusting to what an opponent does out of the gate. I'm not really sure why he has struggled so much on that side of the ball. The offense is a little bit more explainable because I think that a lot of times Riley Leonard needs to fail before he experiences success. And that was another example of that last week. Yes, it was an awful decision to make that throw. But, I don't believe in coincidences with when you're talking about 7 games. They just have to be better out of the chute, and you better do that this week because you certainly can fall behind very quickly to one of the top scoring offenses in the country.
And they can slam the door. And interestingly enough, you already mentioned one of the things I was going to ask you about next, because on the Great Irish Insider podcast, where I owe about 50% of any knowledge I have about Notre Dame football this week, you said, I feel like sometimes Riley Leonard needs to fail in order for him to lock in. And you just backed that up again. Because after that bad interception, he played pretty well, did he not?
He really did. He was 20 of 29. He was better the rest of the first half than he was in the second half. But he's making a lot of throws now that within the first couple games you could not take for granted at all. So he's done a much better job. He continues to run. I think that they're being a little bit more strategic with how many runs he's getting because they need to get him through the season healthy. He'll be matching up against another great running quarterback this weekend. But, because you have a great running quarterback, you're great in the red zone. Chances are you're going to be really good at scoring touchdowns once you get in the red zone. It's true of Notre Dame. It's also true of their opponent this week with Blake Horvath at quarterback.
Yeah, well, we've got a lot to talk about with Navy this week, but a little bit more about wrapping up last week. And I would point out that Riley Leonard, I think what we're seeing of him as a passer may be just about what we're going to get the rest of the season. But the 10 rushing touchdowns gives him obviously a different dimension, and he is on track to set the all-time Notre Dame record, which is currently held by Brandon Wimbush, 2017 at 14. So he's way ahead of schedule to get that one done. Now, staying with that offense, Jeremiah Love, I want to talk about him. Last week, not a huge day as far as yardage goes, but man, Tim, he's doing it all. 14 carries last week, a touchdown. Also had 3 catches. They're starting to get him into the passing game as a receiver. But his blocking has been over the top. Outstanding. He carried the ball on the fake punt. Who else are you going to get it to on that reverse crazy fake punt? He had a special teams tackle, I think, and I think he even on that terrible interception that Riley Leonard threw, he was the guy that caught up with the defensive player who had intercepted the ball and tackled him. Tim, he really seems to be rounding out his game. How good can he be?
Yeah, everything you said there was correct, Phil, including the tackle after the interception. He can be probably about as special as he wants to be. He's going to play on the next level. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a later segment, but he's so dynamic. He's so committed. The commitment to being a great blocker is really, really impressive. It will impress NFL scouts when the time comes. Next year will be his last year in a Notre Dame uniform, barring something happening to him physically. But I thought Jadarian Price did some really good things on Saturday, too. He had a couple 19-yard runs and a 23-yard run. He has a real beautiful, graceful stride as well. But Jeremiah Love is a star, and we're going to continue to see his evolution into a superstar.
Yeah, enjoy him while he's here, guys. He's now scored in every game, and he is helping the Irish across the board in ways beyond the yardage he gains. Okay, let's move over to the defense, and I want to talk about another star in the making, sophomore linebacker Drake Bowen, an absolute beast on Saturday. Big day, led the team with 9 tackles, leads the team in tackles for the season now. Tim, his instincts take him to the ball, and when he arrives, he does so with an attitude. Irish Illustrated talked to him this week. I think he can be the next great Notre Dame linebacker. Am I overstating it?
I don't think so. And I want to make it clear. I don't think that he tackled as violently as he did against Georgia Tech in any of the previous games. And that was something that Al Golden talked to him about during the bye week. And Golden commended him for the way he played against Stanford as well. Yeah, he's skyrocketing up. If you remember from the preseason, I was the one that kept saying, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Boy, have we seen it.
Yeah.
He's playing really great football. He's part of a great linebacking core. Jack Kaiser played very well on Saturday. Kingston Viliamuasa is also going to be a great player, and Jaden Osbury's instincts are tremendous. But Drake Bowen was Defensive Player of the Week, as given to him by Marcus Freeman and the team, and I think that he's on the way up. I think you're going to see a continued level of physicality right through the Navy game as well.
Well, obviously he's gaining confidence every game, and I thought he was just tremendous last week. 6'2", 240 pounds. Former four-star recruit. He's one of the top guys in the class 2 years ago. Out of Gary Andrean, just up the road from South Bend. Also plays on the baseball team. Now, Tim, let's talk some more about the defense. With all the losses to injury on this defense, Botello, Traore, Morrison, they're all out, but this defense continues to roll. They are 5th in scoring defense, 6th in passing efficiency defense, 10th in total defense. Really good on 4th down and in the red zone. How remarkable is it that they are so dominant? And is there a player in there right now that if they lost him, and you heard me knock on wood, that you don't think that could be replaced, that this defense would suddenly fall off the cliff?
Yeah, I think for them, Phil, everything starts with the two guys in the middle, Howard Cross III and Riley Mills. Those are the guys that are pretty irreplaceable. Gabe Rubio's back, and he's really important to them. He's a really big body, but those two guys are making plays. Riley Mills is doing it again, man. Second half of the season, or just a little bit before the start of the second half of the season, Riley Mills has turned it up. He's been really good. Very important that Josh Burnham is back and healthy. We're seeing a better and constantly improving Bryce Young. The linebacking core is outstanding. Leonard Moore, good Lord, he is so good as a freshman, and Christian Gray we know is outstanding. And the two safeties, Xavier Watts is an All-American, and Don Schuler is going to be the leader of that safety crew next year. So, they're putting it all together. But for me, and I think a lot of people in Notre Dame, the football department as well, it starts with Howard Cross and Riley Mills.
I absolutely, those guys are critical, and we got to keep them healthy, obviously. But how would you compare Leonard Moore right now, freshman Leonard Moore, who's now cut to Benjamin Morrison as a freshman, and how we perceive him?
Well, it's hard to compare from the standpoint that Morrison had 6 interceptions, and Leonard Moore is not going to do that. But in terms of he has great length. He has even more length than Benjamin Morrison. And, when you say length, people think, 6'1" guy is the same as the next 6'1" guy. It's just not true. The length of his arms, he just plays a longer game. And he's really outstanding. He hasn't missed a beat. He enters the starting lineup against Louisville, one of the toughest pass games in the country, one of the better receiving cores in the country. He was good. He was real good again. So, he's a very special football player. This comparison better, what percentage better, I don't know. I do know that Benjamin Morrison's an All-American cornerback. And I think Leonard Moore is going to end up being the same kind of have the same kind of accolades as Morrison.
Yeah, early on, he is definitely on that track. Okay, let's move on a little bit, but move on and take a step back as well. It's always a unique experience to go up against the Navy offense, and I say just offense instead of Navy option because we know it's a little different this year. And I was really interested to hear Marcus Freeman say that Tyler Buckner will be one of the scout team quarterbacks to get the Irish ready for it this year. Now, but speaking of Buckner, let's take a step back and talk about the trick plays for a second in the game. In the fourth quarter, first ND runs a Jeremiah Love reverse fake punt, and then a few minutes later, a fake field goal with Buckner doing the honors. And by the way, I knew it was Buckner right away. I said, that cannot be Chris Salerno. But it was a brilliantly executed trick with the numbers and all that stuff. Tim, but here's the question. Tim, was ND just trying to run up the score? Because that's what the TV guys said they were doing.
Oh, the TV guys were ridiculous. It was a 24-7 game. I don't even understand why anyone would think of that narrative. It didn't cross my mind during the game. They've been trying to put Georgia Tech away. They haven't completely done it, and it wasn't like they faked the punt and then they're throwing to the end zone. They ran it a few times. What crossed my mind when that happened was they're just trying to keep possession of the game so Georgia Tech can't score and close the gap. I didn't think there was anything. I've never heard of a 24-7 game and the opponent is running it up. That's the craziest thing that I've ever heard. But the fakes, they had been implemented. They wanted to run them. In fact, Marcus Freeman said that one of the guys on the scout team that did not make the trip, he's watching the game anxious as heck because he's expecting them to do a fake, and they did a fake in both areas of punting and kicking. So nothing wrong with it. You're just trying to keep possession of the football. Freeman had said during the week that they wanted to steal a possession away, and that's what they meant by doing that. I don't know where Louis Riddick got his narrative, but I've never heard of a team running up score when it's 24-7. I was laughing when I first heard it because I go, this, just no clue, especially in this day of the college football playoff when you can't run the score up anymore. Points matter to the selection committees, and so I was done with that. The only thing I go, man, I wish they would have saved that play for another game because that was so insanely good. Maybe they have an offshoot of that, Phil.
I imagine they do. So look for that. And Tyler Buckner getting more involved. All right, but let's move on to the option now, as I said we were going to do. Because Notre Dame doesn't just prepare for that option offense the week of. And we talked about, using the quarterbacks like Tyler Buckner who can run that option on the scout team. But they practice year-round. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you really have to. It isn't something that you can introduce the week of the game or do work on it 10 minutes the week before. You really have to. And it's part of their program because the Naval Academy is on their schedule every year. You pop Army in there every now and then, and Air Force is a little bit different, or occasionally they come on the schedule, but you really have to do that. So anybody that comes into the program on the defensive side of the ball has to know how to play that effectively. And so they'll work on it. They'll talk about principles during the summer, when they get together, and certainly in the preseason, the preseason is 4 weeks long. There's time to work on those kind of things. And then you have bye weeks, which is when Notre Dame worked on it again. So there's time to work on it. You need it, especially this year, because there are some alterations in the way Navy is executing their offense. Yeah,
more of that to come. And I just have one question about Navy before we get into the details. And just answer this how it comes out. This is the best-looking Navy team that you have seen in how many years?
I feel I don't have any perspective on I know Notre Dame plays them every year.
Right.
I can't pick out a year there, Phil, but the balance is what makes it so effective. This is what I've always said, because they would throw 4 passes a game and they'd complete 2 and it'd go for 74 yards. Well, the element of surprise works with 12 passes as well as it does 4, because you have to defend. You have to be so prepared to what they do in the triple option. So they're throwing it an average of 12 times a game. They've gone up to 16. There's still the element of surprise, especially when you throw the shotgun snaps in there, which they use quite a bit.
Well, I always thought that if they could find a way to occasionally throw the ball more effectively, that that option offense would be really good, and we're going to talk about that in the second segment. But we got one more question to ask, and we've been trying to get this segment going a little bit, but we keep talking about football too much, and this is the Tim Priester fun question of the week. Tim Priester, what is your favorite all-time sports movie and your favorite all-time non-sports movie? And you can name a couple. Go ahead.
It's challenging when you try to get me to be fun. No, that's not true. I got a great sense of humor.
Yes, you do.
Favorite movie. It's really hard to limit to one in each category. I'm going to stick to the tried and true that I've always believed since the first time I saw it. I think The Godfather is the greatest movie I've ever seen made. There's so many great sports movies. Kevin Costner's involved in a lot of them, it seems like. But there's only one that makes me cry on a regular basis, and that's Rudy, because not because of Rudy himself, but because Rudy's journey was somewhat similar to mine, becoming an athlete at Notre Dame, so I can relate to that. I think for me, that's the best sports movie ever.
Great choices. And I'm a Godfather fan, too. That didn't come first to mind, but it would probably be in my top 5, and Godfather Part 2 and even Part 3.
Forrest Gump. I think Forrest Gump is great cinema. Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, gosh. You're naming all my favorites. Okay, but my 2 favorites that I always say right off the bat, favorite movie of all time, Patton. Just a movie I just adore, and I've seen it 50 times at least. And the other one is Tombstone. And Val Kilmer just knocked it out of the park in that movie. And I still marvel at his performance every time I see it. Okay, those are my 2 favorite all-time non-sports. Sports movies, I will list my movies because there's no way to come up with one favorite. Rudy is certainly the first one that comes to mind. But I love the movie Hoosiers. Beautiful movie. Gene Hackman, just fantastic. The movie Miracle, just really, I love that. And then one that always comes to mind that's kind of obscure is North Dallas 40. People should watch that movie. It's hilarious. It was made back in the 70s. Great movie. And, of course, anything that's got Rocky connected to it, I'm all in. Thanks, Tim. Coming up, it's the all-time Irish hero, Key to an Irish Victory, Injury Report, and the world-famous Irish Illustrated Prediction. And during the break, it's the Fighting Irish Fact of the Week, brought to you by Ron Wise and the Wise Insurance Agency. This is the 404th edition of Fighting Irish Preview.
This is Art Salzberg. I don't speak for a lot of companies, but Shearer McCulloch is a firm that provides a great and much-needed service. As Sharon and I get older, we've been thinking of moving, but frankly, the thought is somewhat overwhelming. That's where Shearer McCulloch comes in with a full-service plan that takes the pressure off. Listen to this. Shearer McCulloch will sell your house, auction the items you don't want to take, then pack everything else and move you. In sports terms, that's a blowout win. Shearer McCulloch uses an international auction platform to make sure your possessions are seen by the right buyers. They'll get top dollar for your special treasures. Shearer McCulloch is highly recommended by leading retirement communities and law firms, plus they're AAA with the Better Business Bureau. Call them at 441-8636. That's 441-8636. They'll make your moving experience easy and profitable. Shearer McCulloch.
Fighting Irish Fact of the Week is brought to you by our friends at the Wise Insurance Agency. Notre Dame and Navy play annually for the Rip Miller Trophy. Miller was one of Notre Dame's 7 mules that blocked for the 4 horsemen. He went on to coach for Navy, and later Rip Miller became Navy's athletic director. Call Ron Wise at the Wise Insurance Agency or go to thewiseinsuranceagency.com and get an auto or home quote in less than 5 minutes.
Over the last 190 years, a lot has changed.
But at Yuengling, America's oldest brewery, we're still focused on one thing. Brewing darn good beer.
Yuengling, the oldest brewery in America.
Now back to Fighting Irish Preview with your host, Phil Houck.
This is Fighting Irish Preview. The 12th ranked Irish are on the road this week in New Jersey at the Meadowlands. to take on number 24 Navy. TV coverage on ABC starts at noon South Bend time, and it's now time for the all-time Irish Hero, brought to you by the Marina at Lake Gage, Chris Craft, Mastercraft, Vanderbilt, and Premier Pontoons. New and previously owned, we share your boating passion. And today we continue our series on the Notre Dame National Award winners. So far we've covered Ross Browner, Tony Rice, and Rocket Ismail. This week, the winner of the Maxwell Award in 2006, Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn arrived at Notre Dame in 2003 from Dublin, Ohio, and rewrote the school's record books. An accurate passer and outstanding team leader, he took over the starting quarterback position midway through his freshman year and stayed there. He became a full-time starter as a sophomore, and there were flashes of brilliance from the beginning, but Quinn truly blossomed when Charlie Weiss took over as a head coach his junior year. Under Weiss's NFL-style passing attack, in 2005, Quinn threw a school record 32 touchdown passes and racked up 3,919 passing yards. Also a school record. In his senior year, he was back for more. He broke his own record for touchdown passes in a season by throwing 37, and at one point, he threw 226 consecutive passes without an interception, another school record. Following his senior season, Quinn was voted an All-American, finished third in the Heisman Trophy voting, and won the Maxwell Award as the nation's best college football player. In his 4 years, Quinn, a two-time team captain, set 36 school records, many of which still stand. Tim, Brady Quinn was blessed with loads of natural talent, but I don't think it's a stretch to say he owes at least a portion of that success to what I'd call Charlie Weiss's passing game genius.
Oh, I totally agree, Phil. I realize he was young when I'm going to give you these numbers, but in his first 2 years at Notre Dame, he had 26 touchdown passes and 25 interceptions. Completed just 54% of his passes as a sophomore. Then his junior, senior year, he took off 69 touchdown passes and 14 interceptions over his last 2 years. Great college football player, a guy that we in the media will always remember during his senior year in 2006 when he just absolutely loved coming into his weekly press conference and having fun with it and engaging us in conversation. He was a joy to deal with. He was a stud on the football field. I thought he would struggle in the NFL because of accuracy issues, and I think that's why he fell in the draft. But his last 2 years at Notre Dame, 2005, 2006, absolutely sensational.
Yeah, not a surprise that he went into the media business now after a NFL career that did span 7 years, which isn't bad. And he finished his ND career with 95 touchdown passes and 11,762 yards passing. Both of those remain ND records by wide margins. Brady Quinn, winner of the 2006 Maxwell Award, another Marina at Lake Gage all-time Irish hero. The Marina at Lake Gage, we love boats. And it's now time for the Notre Dame Federal Credit Union key to an Irish victory. 6-0, 24th ranked Navy is good. They're really good. This is not your father's Naval Academy football team. Navy's fourth-ranked option-oriented rushing attack is, as always, capable of controlling the clock and limiting possessions, but now there's more because the midshipman offense is also ranked number 2 nationally in passing efficiency. They don't pass often, just 12 times per game on average, but they do it well. Quarterback Blake Horvath, who leads the nation in rushing as a quarterback with 621 yards and 10 touchdowns, is also a 64% passer with 10 TD passes and just 1 interception. This explosive newfangled offense, dubbed the Millennial Wing T offense, is averaging 44.8 points per game, 4th best nationally. Last season in Notre Dame's season opener in Dublin against the midshipmen, the Irish pushed Navy all over the field en route to a 42-3 win. This year, despite their undefeated record, the Navy defense is still yielding 389.7 yards per game, which ranks a lowly 93rd nationally. However, they've been very effective in the red zone, 4th best in the nation. And Navy is one of the best in the nation in the turnover department. They've picked off 10 passes and recovered 4 fumbles against throwing just 2 interceptions with no lost fumbles. Navy, for certain, has not played a schedule quite like Notre Dame's. Their Week 3 opponent, Memphis, was pretty good. They stand at 6-1, but the other 5 Navy wins have come against opponents with a combined record of just 10-25. Tim Priester, what is the Notre Dame Federal Credit Union key to an Irish victory?
Phil, 2 stats I think would surprise people. Number one, Navy's only gone for 4th down 7 times this year. They've converted 6 of them. But they're a more conventional offense now, which is why they are actually 85th in the country in time of possession. So my point being, I think Notre Dame needs to win this game in time of possession, not because of the way Navy runs their offense, just because that is the best way for them to impose their will on Navy. The run game, I think Notre Dame runs all over Navy in this game, and it's going to be a big day for Notre Dame's running backs. It starts with the running game. Charlotte rushed for 200 yards. UAB rushed for 193, and Memphis rushed for 274. Notre Dame's a top 20 rushing team.
Run the football, he said, and that is Tim Priester's Notre Dame Federal Credit Union key to an Irish victory. And Tim Priester, who is this week's Notre Dame Federal Credit Union key player for the Irish? Maybe it's somebody that runs the football?
I think it is. I think it's Jeremiah Love. Navy is going to have a really, really difficult time containing him. And don't get me wrong, Riley Leonard has to do his part throwing the football, and he's capable of doing that. Even though there's some good players there in the secondary for Navy, but it's Jeremiah Love. He will go over 100 yards in this game. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got up in the 150 range.
All right. It makes sense to use that running game to control the clock a little bit and hand that ball to Jeremiah Love. And he is your Notre Dame Federal Credit Union key Irish player this week. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union, where you bank does matter. And it's now time for the injury report, brought to you by Indiana Physical Therapy, your choice for physical therapy now with 21 Indiana locations. Tim, how are the Irish health-wise going in to Game 8?
The Georgia Tech game was a real physical game, but Georgia Tech's the one that got the brunt of it. Notre Dame came out of it pretty good. Mitch Jeter, the kicker, still listed as questionable. I would expect Zach Yoakum to do the kicking. Billy Schrauth, although Marcus Freeman didn't use the word probable, I think that's the category that he fits in. He could play this week. Could it be a series or 2? I think at the very least they want to get him in on special teams. That's really it. Jordan Faison was back last week. We should see him even healthier heading into the Navy game.
All right, sounds good. Guys coming back. Thanks, Tim. That is the Indiana Physical Therapy Injury Report. And it's now time for the world-famous IrishIllustrated.com prediction, brought to you by SES Environmental. Need help navigating environmental risk and with regulatory compliance? You need SES. Look them up at sesadvantage.com. Tim Priester, Vegas says the Irish by 12. That's bounced around a little bit. So what does America's foremost authority say?
Wow, I think it's tough. It's tough to predict, but you look back to last year and you know that Notre Dame was physically superior to Navy. So I think that shows on the offensive side of the ball for Notre Dame. Have you ever heard of a team that has scored 22 touchdowns in 23 red zone appearances? That's what Navy has done, and that's what a running quarterback does for you. That's why Notre Dame's offense, which can bog down, is so good in the red zone, because you have Riley Leonard to score. So I digress a little bit, but I think Navy is going to, their offense is going to be a challenge, but I think they're going to have a real difficult time stopping Notre Dame with their defense. Again, Riley Leonard has to be on offensively. They won't just be able to run it if he is not. But I like Notre Dame 38, Navy 27.
38-27 in favor of the Irish. That is Tim Priester's world-famous IrishIllustrated.com prediction. Tim, no doubt Navy is playing with a lot of confidence, ranked in the top 24, 25. Now they're at 24. Undefeated, getting lots of publicity. And their incorporation of this passing game into their offense is a factor that I have really taken note of. I always thought for a long time that if you could ever figure out a way to do that with an option offense, that you could be really good. But the Irish have experience on the field and on this coaching staff preparing for this kind of an offense. And Notre Dame's going to bring plenty of firepower and physicality to bear against a suspect defense. Win the turnover battle, and the Irish will be just fine. But I'm still going to take this as a close game. I'll take the Irish in a one-score game. Notre Dame 31, Navy 24. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Phil.
Go Irish. And thanks for listening to Fighting Irish Preview. Special thanks to Jim Shovelin, Brett Rump, Art Salzberg, and studio producer Adam Schenkel. Fighting Irish Preview is the copyrighted property of Judge Phil Productions. For more Fighting Irish Preview, look us up at fightingirishpreview.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.